بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our lessons on da'wah and the methodology of giving da'wah to others. We mentioned last week the methodology and some tips and some strategies in giving da'wah to those who are mushrikun, polytheists. And today we want to move on to the next group, which are the atheists. Those who are atheists. And ultimately, when giving da'wah to them, there's also a strategy. For each one of these groups, there's a strategy, a method in approaching them, based on the hadith of Mu'adh bin Jabal radiallahu ta'ala that we mentioned in the beginning. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam informed him about him going to the people of the book in order to explain to him that these people have a certain level of knowledge, not like the mushrikun. So if you're giving da'wah to the people of the book, you're not going to give them the da'wah the way you would give the da'wah to the people who are Ahlul Jahiliyyah, the Quraysh, who are ignorant, who had no knowledge. So the next category of people, which is a growing group in today's time, is the atheists. And as Muslims, this group is very dangerous. But at the same time, alhamdulillah, as Muslims, there are strategies and we have the truth, so we can also call them to Islam and engage with them, whether they be co-workers or people who are neighbors, or for students who are in school, who have classmates who are like this. And the mulhidun, the atheists, the way that we approach them, we have to begin with the conversation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence, إثبات وجود الله. And the ulama, they talk about this in their books. In fact, some of them, they mention it now, some of the contemporary scholars, when they talk about al-imanu billah. And they said, imanu billah, when you say you believe in Allah and tu'mina billah, it encompasses four things. Al-imanu billah, it encompasses four things. And the first of them is that you have iman in the wujud of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. And then iman in the tawheed of rububiyyah, the lordship of Allah. The tawheed of Allah's lordship. Then tawheed al-uluhiyyah, the tawheed of Allah's worship, and tawheed al-asma' wa-sifat, the last one, the tawheed of Allah's names and attributes. So we know the three categories of tawheed, but the fourth one, they say, part of iman billah, you have to believe Allah exists. Hence the mulhid, the atheist, he has this problem. And anyone else in that category who has this issue, we have to begin there. And last week we were talking about the polytheist, the mushrik, who believes in Allah or some gods, but not one God. So we have a different way to deal with them. The mulhid, he has nothing, no foundation. So you have to start by first establishing that first pillar and then going up. And just to remind us, when we say the mulhid, the atheist, they fall into many categories. They could be a secularist, and it could be a communist, or could be people who are called la diniyya, people who have no deen. They say, I don't have to follow anything. Or there's some groups amongst them, they call them agnostics, la adriya, I don't know. If you ask them Allah exists, la adri, they're called la adriya, I don't know. So these groups, all of them mushrikun, even though they're atheists, they're considered mushrik. And we've talked about it last week. Shirk in the rububiyyah of Allah breaks into categories. And from that is shirk in the rububiyyah of Allah, bi bab ta'til or bi sabil ta'til, by denying and severing the right of Allah over their creation. In the khaliq and the makhluk. They make ta'til. They say Allah doesn't exist, hence there's nothing between Allah and His creation. No rights of worship, there's no responsibility on our part, there's no revelation, there's no prophethood. So they're mushrik. They do shirk. In which form? Shirk in rububiyyah. And how? By making ta'til, denial of Allah's haqq and His right. It's different than the shirk maybe of a group like the Christians, although Christians have shirk, but the Christians do shirk differently. They do shirk by saying Allah is not one, He's three in one. So we said last week this is called shirk in rububiyyah by way of andad. They make a nid, yani partner for Allah, say Allah has two of them, three partners altogether. There's one and there's two more, so three. So the mulhid, he's in the same category but in a different way. So you could honestly use last week's strategies against the mushrik, but they won't be as effective because the atheist typically is more argumentative, or he may have more knowledge about, or doubts I should say, not knowledge, doubts, that it's not easy to deal with. So as Muslims, very important that we understand how to approach these people. Because globally, the atheism is increasing. In Canada here, 30% of people, according to 2019 Pew Research studies, 2019, it said about 30% of the Canadians ascribe to atheism or no religion. Okay, Jama'ah, pay attention, 30%, that's more than us, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, all combined. We don't form that. We form like 15%, all the non-Christians groups. And then this group is doubled, 30%. So that means clearly there are people amongst us, our community, who probably have this kind of problem. But I almost think the atheist is some guy who's a white person. Could be a Muslim who got confused, went to university, went to college, has no knowledge of Islam, they got mixed up. So as Muslims, we have to be able to approach them. And the da'iyah who wants to da'wah towards an atheist, they need to know how to speak to them and what kind of arguments to raise. Today we're going to focus on just a little bit of those from the Quran and Sunnah and the Salaf and the ulama. How can you approach such people? Before beginning, we have to define the term atheism and mulhid. What's ilhad? So ilhad Islamically versus this ilhad or atheism technically in the Western language is different. So when we say ilhad, it just means to make some kind of deviation from something. If someone makes ilhad, is deviating from one thing to another thing, usually from truth to falsehood. This is the idea of ilhad. That's some kind of inhiraf, it's a mule, moving away. That's the essence of ilhad. So when you hear ilhad, you see the ulama talk about ilhad fi asma'illahi wa sifatih. Someone will say, what kind of mulhid is that? They're talking about in Islamic circles, the mulhid from this angle who does ilhad means to distort Allah's names and attributes from their apparent meaning to the kind of figurative meaning, big ta'wil and fasid. That's the ilhad the ulama talk about. But they also generally, the mulhid are like those in the past, like the Dahriya. In the Quran, Surah Jathiyah, Allah talks about Dahriya, the old atheists, who said nothing destroys us illa dahr, except for time. So those are mulhid also, he's an atheist. That's maybe the one we understand. He doesn't believe in God, he believes in materialism, doesn't believe in Allah. So when we say ilhad, it has many, it can have a linguistic meaning, technical meaning, a specific or more general. But when we use it unrestrictedly, we're talking about the people who don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the atheist usually is the one who has a lack of belief or absence of faith in a deity. It could be the deity of Islam, Judaism, Christianity, or any. Because usually when the atheists, they write about atheism, they have their own definition. Where they talk about specifically, they have a problem with a God, a deity who speaks to us, communicates with us, reveals things to us, who has certain sifat al-kamila, certain sifat which are kamila, beautiful and complete. This is the kind of atheists that usually they have description of. And they have their own terminologies, but we're not going to spend time on it because some of it is more technical, but the point is clear. An atheist, one doesn't believe in God. Either absence of faith or openly says, I don't believe. So the one who says, I don't know, they call him agnostic, la adri, I don't know. And the one who says, there is no Allah, that's mulhid, atheist. He's clearly making a claim, I don't believe in Allah. Na'udhu billah. In the past, they always were minorities, and today they're growing. So examples in the Quran of old atheists will be the Dahriya and Fir'aun. Because Fir'aun, he claimed the rubiyyah for himself. He denied Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's right. And he said it more than once, وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, I am the Lord Most High. Surah Al-Qasas, he told them the Nile flows underneath him. And other of these claims. Even though he knew in his heart he's lying, but openly he was telling the people this. So he was also an atheist. And that teaches us a benefit from the story of Fir'aun, that he was only on his tongue. In his heart, he believed, he knew. And Musa a.s. used in the end of Surah Isra that language. قَدْ عَلِمْتَ, you know that this what I send is basair, are insights from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know that. And which means that in his heart, he knew, but in his tongue and his actions, he wanted to deny. And then in his life, he tried to take the shahada and it didn't count. So this teaches us the idea that the atheism that we see today, it's all tongue, all talk. But if you ask them deep down, trouble comes, calamity happens. You see them, the atheist, he says, he calls out to God. So this shows you again that most of them, this is their problem. How do we give da'wah to them? We have to establish a methodology. I'll mention them now, and I'll mention them the proof for it and where we get it from. When dealing with the mulhid, you could say there are 4 steps that we have to take. 4 steps. Step number 1, we have to establish the existence of Allah, the Creator. That's the first step. And number 2, Once you establish this, you have to establish the obligation to worship this Creator. Because there's no point of saying, I believe Allah exists, but I don't worship. I don't worship Him. That's a type of lack of religion, right? And faith. It's still a type of kufr. So if someone says, I don't believe in Allah, that's an atheist. If he says, I believe there's a Creator out there, but I don't have any obligations towards Him, I don't have to worship Him, technically they call that a deist. Says there's something out there, that's it. So he didn't worship Allah. He just says that someone created us, but He does nothing. That's not good enough. That's why you don't just stop there. You have to keep going. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, yastalzimu Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, right? Tawheed al-Rububiyyah leads you there. So what happens today, unfortunately, in some da'wah scenes, people focus too much on proving Allah exists, and they don't go the next step. Or that maybe the whole point is to prove that Allah exists, and the person may even accept it, but you have to continue the argument. Because that person will say, I agree with you, there's a God. I agree there's a Creator. Then he leaves. No, you have to then worship that Creator. That's the second one. And the third step is that he has to believe that the way to reach the Creator is through the messengers. So you have to prove to that person that now that you know you have to worship Allah, how do you worship Him? From the way that Rasul taught us. Who teaches us what Allah wants? In the past, until Prophet Muhammad was the prophets and messengers. That's their job, to convey to us the message of Allah. And Allah is not going to speak to us directly. He only speaks to the prophets and messengers directly, then He passes the message. So you have to explain this, and this is where it comes, our other class we did on proof of prophethood. It comes here. Right? So you can find more resources there. And the fourth step, if you accept the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to us through the messengers, you have to confirm that the final messenger is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sent to all of mankind. And you have to dispel any doubts about that. So proofs of prophethood, and specifically Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to prove to them His prophethood, and the fact that His prophethood and He's for all of us. We have to accept it. That's the fourth step. And all of these four that I just mentioned is taken from the words of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah. So Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, this is what he mentioned about how to give da'wah to an atheist in his Risala, Da'wah ila Allah, called Treatise and Calling to Allah, page 18 to 19. So Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, you can see it. It's in Arabic too. The book is actually original Arabic, but then translated too, step by step. So he says, if you want to call a person who denies the existence of the Creator to affirm His existence, worship Him and follow the messengers, then we begin. Then he mentioned all four steps I just mentioned. So that's the methodology we are going to use. Step 1, 2, 3, and 4 from the words of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen. And this is helpful to know that the Shaykh himself told us that, so that we're not going to innovate or try to guesswork how to do it. Because we said in these classes, we're learning the manhajiyya, the methodology of how to give da'wah, and everything we have to take it from Ahlul Ilm. So we don't want to just make up our own way. Maybe you have a way that works. No one's going to say it's not effective, or maybe it is, but we need one that the ulama, the people of knowledge, say it's valid. Why? Because today we'll see a lot of da'wah that's going on is based on arguments that can work if done correctly. But most cases either are ineffective or come with baggage, a lot of other issues which are wrong. Because Ahlul Bid'ah, they're the ones who are focusing on this topic a lot. You'll see when we talk about how to rule existence, Ahlul Bid'ah, this is their job, the Mutakallimun, because for them Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. It's the same thing. And they spend all day and night explaining different ways. And their arguments, all of them are da'if. All of them. And they don't work properly. They get you somewhere, but they don't get you to the existence of Allah. And this is important to know. So we're trying to follow the way of Sunnah Jama'ah, the way of the Salaf in doing da'wah. And this is the whole point of what we're trying to present. Before continuing, there is another method famously used in today's da'wah scene, popularized by IERA, called the GORAP method. And some of the GORAP method, it's an acronym. God, right, that's G, and then the O stands for, I think it's oneness of God, and R stands for revelation, and then and P is prophethood. So it's kind of similar to what Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned. He started with talking about Allah, talking about His oneness, talking about revelation, prophethood. But if you look at where they got it from, I was checking the history of this argument. They mentioned one, Wallahu Alam, Egyptian Shaykh gave the idea to their founder to use this method. And it is the most common one they teach now. I'm not saying it's wrong necessarily, but we don't know necessarily where it came from. There's a PhD, one guy he did, online Islamic da'wah narratives in the UK, the case of IERA. And he mentions that this is the history of the argument, where it came from. But in place of it, we'll use something which we know from Ahlul Ilm, This is what I mentioned, Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned, rahimahullah. And that's better for us because in da'wah it matters. All this matters. So it's not hair splitting, it's being careful. Every argument you present, where you get it from. Because ultimate da'wah is ibadah, brothers and sisters. We have to remember that. So if we say this is an argument, question we should ask, where did it come from? It's in the Quran and Sunnah. Who said it? Because when it comes to da'wah, we know that from the wasa'ir of da'wah, it's tawqifiyya. It's revelation based. But what's happening today in da'wah scene is everyone gives his try, Okay, take your turn, let's see. Whose works, who doesn't. And sometimes it works, but if you look online, you see a lot of problems that come when people improvise. So I'm not saying that the go rap is not necessarily correct, 100%, but we will replace it with something that we know from a reliable scholar, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah. Before mentioning how we can prove Allah exists, what kind of arguments and proofs we can use, we have to know that Allah's existence is something that can be proved in so many ways. It doesn't have only one way. Okay, so someone should not say it's only one way. You can't make hasr of the adillah. You can't say it's only one way. There's multiple ways. And so many ways because there's so much creation. And all the creation reaches Allah's existence and His belief in different ways. And so that's our belief, not only one way. Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah writes, since the routes to knowing Allah and acknowledging Him are very many, every group of examiners took a different route to knowing Him. And they thought that their path was the only legitimate path. And this is pure error and considered speaking without knowledge. So some Ahlul Ilm, you see that they said that some of the ulama, they said this is the tariq wahid, this way. Another group came and said this way. Another guy came and Shaykh said this way. And so Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is saying now all of them can be correct if they're valid, but there's not only one way. And you can see today the awam, some of them they came to Islam, no argument. And something happened to him in his life, he became Muslim. One guy, he became Muslim, saw a dream. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide people different ways. But what we're saying is that you can use different methods, but they have to be authentic. That's important. They have to be based on the usul of the Aqidah of Sunnah Jama'ah. And this taken from this Kitab Dar Ta'arud Aql wa Naql, volume 3, page 333. Before continuing, the Mutakallimun, those who are the people of philosophy, the Maturidiyya wal Asha'ira, we talk a lot about them because they're the ones who are now popular in the da'wah. In the past, they're the ones who made special effort. And if you look at today, arguments for Allah's existence, you always find their arguments available. Why? Because they believe Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed Lordship, is Tawheed worship. If you prove to someone God exists, you prove to him that God is worthy of worship. That's it. So this is a problem because their understanding of Tawheed is not like ours. They got the Tawheed wrong. They limit it to only one of the three categories, really. And so therefore, the scholars, they see that the people who are before, like the scholars who came before, after the Salaf and before our time, some of the arguments they presented work according to their Aqidah. But they're not correct according to the correct Aqidah. And we're going to look at just some of those examples. But the reason why I mention this is because if you compare the two, you see the correct arguments for Allah are easier, quicker, and more effective. And the arguments of the Mutakallimun are longer, they're more complicated, and ineffective. They don't reach the conclusion. Sometimes they have 20 muqaddimat maybe, or at least 5 to more muqaddimat, means premise 1, 2, 3, 4. By the time you finish reciting everything, the guy walked away maybe. And he doesn't know what you're talking about, using these very difficult words. And I'm saying now today, we have this common rise. So many of our ulama have been critical of this. They said we don't need those. If there's a hajah for this kind of terminology, let's say the person you're talking to is a professor or something, he's deep in this kalam, he's deep in philosophy, then somebody has to argument in his according to his language, that's different. But the lay person, he doesn't know what you're talking about. And we have to be honest, the lay person, he doesn't. The lay people, the easiest argument, and we're going to show, is the one that comes from the fitrah, the real fitrah. Because it's already built in. Tawheed is already here. The oneness of Allah is built into us. Allah put it into us. That's the easiest, the quickest argument. So the difference between the Salaf al-Salih and their way of da'wah to the atheist versus the Mutakallimun is the fact that Mutakallimun believed that the first way to prove Allah's existence is not using the fitrah, your natural disposition, intuition. He said no. Doesn't prove. They believe it doesn't have any knowledge. The fitrah doesn't have the oneness of Allah implanted in you. They don't believe that. They believe the fitrah is a blank slate. Okay, Ikhwan, this is important. Now when we talk of fitrah, Ahl Sunnah versus Ahl Bid'ah, we believe the fitrah has knowledge. Allah put in it some basic knowledge. For example, and we'll get to it in more detail, Allah put in everyone when they're born, they believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence and His deservedness of worship. That's built in. Fitrat Allah allati fatara nas alayha. That's part of it. Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah talks heavily about that. This is his favorite argument, and the Salaf uses argument. What else the fitrah has? It has the basic knowledge. Like 1 plus 1 is 2. I'm going to have to teach you that 2 is correct. They taught you 1 plus 1, but the 2 you already got it as soon as they said it. Because it's fitri. A half is smaller than a whole. It's fitri. Right? No one's going to say, prove to me that. If someone says that, he's majnoon. Because now he's going outside the bounds of logic. That's built in, you can't prove it. And the reason I'm saying this is Ahlul Bid'ah, they said no. The Mutakallimun said we're born blank slate. وَاللَّهُ أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. That's the dalil. It's khati, wrong. لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. You're born nothing, no knowledge. So we say, what about the Adami? Allah took the Qaadir from Adam. أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَا. This ayah in Surah Araf, that's proof for the ahad. We believe Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Allah took the Qaadir from all of human beings. Took us all of our souls from the backside of Adam, and Allah said, am I not your Lord? Everybody said yes. And on top of that, Hadith Abu Hurairah, Sahih Bukhari, Muslim, متفق عليه, ما من مولود إلا يولد على فطرة. There is no newborn except he's born upon the fitrah. So that's the adillah, showing that we're all born. Children are born believing that. But the Ahlul Bid'ah Mutakallimun, they don't believe that. And sadly, they even influenced some of the Westerners. Some of the philosophers of the West, they got influenced by the Ash'ariyah. And they believe we're born blank slate, everything we learn from experience. And that's wrong, right? We know that's wrong. So because of this, Ahlul Bid'ah Mutakallimun, what do? In order to prove Allah's existence, we have to use nadar. We have to use a logical, intellectual arguments. Where the Ahlul Sunnah and Jama'ah, we believe in fitrah, we believe that has some kind of knowledge built in already. That's the strongest argument. Dalil al-fitri. You guys with me here? It is important. It shows you the difference between Aqidah, how your Aqidah and what you understand about Allah impacts your arguments and your understanding. So if we didn't know that, you always wonder why Ahlul Bid'ah always say awwal wajib. The first wajib upon someone is nadar, to examine the world and prove. They say the first wajib for a child who reaches the age of puberty is to look around the universe and prove Allah exists. Himself is a proof. We anfusikum, yourself a proof, you reach puberty. And they want us, the child, to go outside looking at the sky. And remember, when they say argument, they're not talking about everybody goes outside and makes an argument. No, they have a specific method too. And you're going to see they have a specific argument. This is the only way, they say, to get there. So the point of all of this is that Ahlul Sunnah and Jama'ah, we have better arguments, sounder in Aqidah, and easier to understand. So therefore, some of the ulama have spent great time in trying to show the difference between Manhaj Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah versus the Manhaj methodology of Mutakallimun, proving Allah's existence. It's a big topic, which we can't get into. But we're just going to mention today the argument that's chosen, a good argument from the way of the Salaf, the ulama defended, is simple and easy. And there's a second argument, maybe another time we can present. But what kind of arguments do Mutakallimun they use? Scholars, they say they have 5 major arguments they use. And it's important for the student of Aqidah to know these arguments, because these arguments are the foundation upon which they build the rest of the Aqidah. It's the ecosystem comes from here. What's the argument? They use the Dalil Hudud al-Ajsam. This is what it's called. It has different names. Dalil Hudud al-Ajsam wal-A'rad, sometimes they call it. Evidence of the origination or creation of bodies and characteristics. Right? Even the language is difficult, right? Hudud al-Ajsam, right? What does that mean? So this is their argument. This is their key. Mu'tazila, wal-Asha'ira, Maturidiyya, Falasifa, Mutafalsifa, all of them use this one. So when you notice, they differ in everything, almost like not everything, but a lot of the furu' and the Aqidah, these groups differ. But if you ask them, how do you prove Allah's existence? They all have one way. Which is shows you what? The Mu'tazili, Ash'ari, Maturidi have the same Aqidah, Usul. They all share the same Usul Aqidah, which is the intellect reigns king. The intellect and the text. And there's an argument between the two or difference, where do you go with? They say the intellect. And I'm telling you, brothers, this because if you understand, one day you can read that argument, you study in more depth. If you ever come across it, you'll see how corrupted it is and what it did and what it led them to. This argument led them to denying Allah's sifat. If you ask them, why don't you believe in sifat ikhtiyariyah? Allah has sifat fi'liyah. Allah has voluntary action-based attributes. They say, no. Why? Because of Dalil Hudud al-Ajsam. This is the foundation of the ecosystem for all their beliefs. And it's important, the ulama say that Ahlul Sunnah and Jama'ah, the students, they know this. Because if you ever wanted to argue with them even and try to get them to understand, you go for where the foundation, you attack them for where it comes. Where did you get that argument from? Who told you that argument is effective? Where in the Kitab and Sunnah did it come? How come Sahaba and Salaf never knew it? And if you trace the origins of this argument, brothers and sisters, you will see min ajaib, where it came from. It goes all the way back to the philosophers of who? Of ancient Greek and ancient Jews and Yes, you can follow the argument, you'll find it where it really takes you. So the ulama said this argument is a bid'ah and it's not effective. I don't have time to get into why, but that's the biggest one to use. Another argument to use is called dalil imkan. Today you probably heard it a lot in da'wah scene, that contingency argument. You heard this? Many of us heard this, the contingency argument. Dalil imkan. Argument Ibn Sina and Nayran Razi and those who followed them. This argument is also da'if and it's ineffective. The ulama criticized it, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah a lot. And before him, Al-Amidi and others. This is called dalil imkan. Contingent and necessary existence. I'm sure you heard this today because this one brings a lot in the da'wah scene. Now everyone's learning this. But the problem with this, it can take you somewhere but doesn't take you to belief in Allah the way we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So obviously I don't have time to get into it, but the ulama have criticized that argument as well. Another one that they use, one more, is called dalil ihkam wal itqan, evidence for the perfection and the wisdom of the universe. That one is acceptable in some ways, that the universe is created with wisdom. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, what arguments they favor? We'll just mention two of them because of the time. Number one, the dalil al-fitra, the evidence from the fitra, the natural disposition. This is the best argument. And this one I'm going to present today, how the ulama understand it. And it's the easiest argument to make. And the second one is the dalil that you find in the Quran, Surah Tur, chapter 52, verse 34 and 35. This ayah. Were they created by themselves or themselves the creator? This one, this is the ulama, they call it dalil al-khalq wal-ijad. They have different names for it. But this one, sometimes you hear the name in English, cosmological argument. They have many names. The names are not important. The argument is important. This one is in the Quran. Dalil al-fitra, it's in the Quran and Sunnah. So what's the difference between Ahlul Sunnah and Ahlul Bid'ah? Our arguments are in Kitab and Sunnah. Their arguments are pure in aql. And why? Because they think the aql is the only way to prove Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence, because also the aql is the foundation for reaching Allah's conclusion. Because of this, they say we have to use the aql to prove Allah. Well, so you have to understand, brothers and sisters, that methodology is flawed from the get-go. Why is the intellect the only place to learn about Allah? Why can't we know Allah through the aql and the texts? Because just last week or 2 weeks ago we said the mutakallimun believe that the Quran and Sunnah only offer adilla, evidence which are akhbar, like reports and narration. They don't have adilla aqliya. And we refuted them saying, no, the Quran and Sunnah have dalil aqliya naqliya, textual and logical, both it's in the Quran. Example, am khuliqu min ghayri shay'in am hum khaliqun. That's a logical textual argument. Allah said, did they create themselves, or they themselves the creator, or they were created by something else? But they're not certain. Allah said that. So Allah is arguing with them logically, and it's the same time the speech of Allah. Naqliya, aqliya. But the mutakallimun didn't believe that. That's the problem. So what they say is that when it comes to the ilahiyat, theology and aqidah, leave it to the aql. They use the Quran and Sunnah sparingly, here and there a little bit. Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah say, no, the deen has Quran, Sunnah, wal fiqh, Quran and Sunnah, anything Quran and Sunnah. So we start with there, and that's why you see a difference between the two conclusions. You also notice, brothers and sisters, that if you look at their arguments, after all the effort they put, their arguments, they're not even effective. Who admitted it? Themselves. Ghazali admitted this. Warrazi and Juwayni, others, they said it's best to cause confusion. And you can just see the faces of people when you try to present these arguments. They got lost when you're talking the words, like all these terminologies. Whereas the Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah, the arguments are simple and they're also easy to follow. So with that being said, what is the dalil al-fitra? Let's talk about this dalil and how can we use it to talk to an atheist. Because brothers and sisters, if you see experience, it works. I've talked to atheists before, you bring this argument, it works. Most of the time they're confused or they're shocked when you tell them about it because they don't know about it. They don't know about the fact that Allah's existence is already imprinted inside of us. And it's proven through the aql, the logic, and intellect, the naql, the text, and science. Before getting there, the Quranic arguments, the Quran and Sunnah arguments, not only they're more effective, we know they're effective because the people in the past were guided through them. Like the example, chapter 52, Surah Tur, ayah 34 and 35. أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Jubair Mut'im became Muslim because of that. Bukhari, Muslim. We know this qissa some of us. Jubair Mut'im was the captive in the battle of Badr. So he said, I was a captive, one of the prisoners of war, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam leading Salat al-Maghrib, and he was reading Surah Tur, and he reached those ayahs. And he's sitting outside the Salah as a kafir. Jubair is not a Muslim. So I just heard, "Am khuliqu min ghayri shay'in am hum khaliqun." He said, my heart almost flew out of my chest. I couldn't believe Allah's arguing with the mulhid, the atheist. And in a different version of hadith, he said, "Waqa iman fi qalbi." That's the first time iman fell into my heart. Became Muslim right there. Why I'm saying this? Look at the track record of these arguments Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came with and he used to present. Versus their arguments, which they don't necessarily work. And if they work, it's very hard. I'm not saying that some of them are not effective or if done correctly, but even the foundations, because they're not correct, even their conclusions are not correct. Let's talk about now Dalil al-Fitrah and how we can understand it. And it's important, brothers and sisters, we spend time learning these kind of things, because if you have a co-worker who's an atheist, family member who's atheist, young youth in the masjid who has doubts, you're going to present these arguments. And we have to know, Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah, we don't study the deen except to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to improve our knowledge, and then later on to da'wah. When we think today in our community that people are not confused, there's a lot of youth who are confused. And where is it coming from? It's coming from school. Schools where they teach them nothing except for godlessness and science without God, Allah in there, and they teach them doubts. So many of the youth in their own experience, they have questions, they have confusions. Who's going to answer these questions? Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah. Nobody else. We're supposed to answer because we have the correct aqeedah. So the tulab al-ilm, those who study the deen, those who are du'at, they have to have the ilm of this. And in order to study it, you also don't have to remember that some things you might learn you didn't know, and it doesn't take you that much time, but the impacts can be significant. Because what little time you spent or effort you put in learning it, tomorrow you have that in your mind. Anytime someone has a doubt, family member, someone can call you, you clear the doubts, Allah give you hasanat. But what can be also not good is that sometimes the doubt comes and nobody knows how to answer it. That's not befitting Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah. We have ilm. And we don't have to rely upon mutakallimun to come and help save the day. They don't know what they're talking about when it comes to these things, because they're going to present it their way, and their way is not going to go against the truth. So let's begin by first talking about what is understood by the fitrah. What is meant by the fitrah? The fitrah, the scholars say, is this innate disposition, the natural, normal disposition human beings are born on. And some of the scholars, they use the term fitrah, they say it's that faculty Allah given us that inclines or pushes the humans to believe in Allah and to reach certain normative conclusions. Means it's something Allah put into us. It's a capacity and ability. It's a way to learn. It helps you to learn things around you. So it's in there. We all have it. Like I said, the half is smaller than the whole. It's built in. So the fitrah is something real. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in a natural way. And the fitrah doesn't mean that somebody's born with knowledge about the details of Islam. No. When the ulama say that the fitrah is al-Islam, they mean that this person has the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If left alone, no environmental changes, that person will believe in one God. He'll believe in tawheed. He'll believe that Lord is perfect, and that's what they'll conclude. It doesn't mean you're born with knowledge of things like the details of wudu and salah and stuff. No, not that. So it's important to understand what it is and what it is not. The argument of the fitrah is that humans are born innately, born believing the existence of Allah. And this argument was heavily supported, in the latter times by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. This is probably his preferred argument. All the arguments that he responded to, commented on, this is the one that the Salaf al-Salih would use. And this is also the one that is closer to the evidences. The Salaf also use other arguments too, right? For example, that the world is perfect. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the arguments of Salaf, Abu Hanifa's debate with the atheist. Right? For example, one day a group of atheists, Abu Hanifa met them, and they were telling him, do you believe in Allah exists? He said to them, yes. And he knows that they don't believe in Allah. So he gave them an example. He said, imagine there's a forest somewhere, a tree fell down, broke, turned into a ship, and went down the river by itself and came here. And then I jumped on it and I rode it, and I came here. Is that possible? They said, that's craziness. He said, then what's the difference between you believing the whole universe came out of nothing, out of chance, and this not happening out of chance? So he used this kind of argument. And you can find it. Tafsir ibn Kathir under Surah Baqarah ayah 22. He brings Imam Ahmad, Shafi'i. They all use argument of design. The universe is too perfect to be a chance. If anyone argues otherwise, he's going to be in big trouble. Because science also agrees. It's too perfect. So what do the atheists today say? Well, the world is so perfect, there must be other worlds that are not perfect. So they made up what? Multiple universe, or the multiverse theory. It's like saying this universe is so chance. Our universe is a chance but perfect, and other universe is a chance and they're messed up. So they made it up. So look what they're doing. They don't want to accept Allah. They will say anything. So aliens, and this actually shows you that the atheists, unfortunately, many of them, not all, are not looking for truth. So the fitrah is something built in. Science today has confirmed what the ulama have been saying, that people are born believing in God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And today, if you look in science, those who are science students or graduates, cognitive science of religion, CSR. You can go and research more about this. Is the subject matter. Underneath there, professors spending millions of dollars trying to study it, and they're concluding Allah exists. Imagine, these are not, some of them are Christians, some are not even Christian. They're finding out what do people believe. And the dalil for the fitrah, that it exists, and it's from where we get this proof, is the ayah in Surah Ar-Rum, chapter 30, verse 30. Allah says the pure nature Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the humans upon فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها. That's the dalil, one of them. And the hadith Abu Hurairah cited, every child is born and upon the fitrah. However, it's his parents, this is the key here, the parents, yuhawwidani, they make him a Jew, or Nasran, or Christian, or Majisani, or a fire worshipper. That last part of the hadith, the environment, parents, upbringing, change the aqidah, explains why there's atheists and there's not everyone is a mu'min, or Muslim. Okay, because the atheists will come and say, okay, if you believe that correct, how come there's so many kafirs out there? We tell them, because your parents corrupted you, your school corrupted you, your environment corrupted you. And if you left alone, you would not have that belief. And this is a beautiful benefit, because this helps explain for the Muslim why there's difference between how many believers there are in the world, in God, and how many there are not. We tell them, because of environment. And the hadith of Abu Hurairah shows that. And this is important, because that's one of the objections. We tell them, finish the hadith, there's the answer. And it also explains and refutes the atheist who says that they're so logical, they're so intelligent, they conclude God doesn't exist. No, an atheist is born usually from parents, one is practicing one faith, another practices another faith, or both practice no faith. They found in the UK more than 40% of them are born in irreligious households. That means the atheist is just raised atheist, same way we're raised Muslim. They always love to believe, I'm so smart, I reached this conclusion. No, you didn't. You were atheist before you came to study anything. And most of them didn't even study the own thing. Tell them, so how smart are you? Because they'll say, you guys just blind follow. I'm telling you too also. But I'm on the fitrah and you're on batil. That's the difference. And we have to know this, because the hadith, the foundation for us. Now, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, when he took this argument now, how does he explain the fitrah? What does the fitrah have inside of it? What does it teach us? He says, for example, the fitrah tells us a lot of things. It has inside of it certain kinds of knowledges. For example, morality. Very important. That's another argument for Allah's existence. Morality. The fitrah is preloaded with moral content. Right versus wrong. Dhulm, oppression is evil. It's fitri. Today everyone notices how many people become Muslim because what's happened to our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Many of them are becoming Muslim because they watch the videos, they get so angry. Objective evil. This is evil what they're doing. And the people of Palestine, may Allah aid them, they're so resilient. They're not giving up. You know, subhanAllah, it's amazing. Objectively, people know that. So the morals come to fitrah. What dalil? فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah inspired the soul, فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, the good and the bad. So Ibn Taymiyyah used the example, and even others. You see a child today, if you were to hit him, he cries. Because he knows that's wrong and he feels pain. But if, for example, you come to a child and you give one child $1, another child $2, he's going to cry. Why is he crying? Because of oppression. Children, they know that. Imagine, so the child, if you give him one, another one two, he cries. How does he know that? That's dhulm. He knows that's dhulm. Because you gave that guy two for no reason. So this point I'm trying to mention is fitri. And the children are key because we're going to see, this is where the science finds. The fitrah, it also has in it, for example, the ability to use language. Another proof for Allah's existence, the existence of language. Brother and sister, you'll be shocked. The greatest linguists in the world, they cannot conclude the source of language. If you want more, you can Google it. Noam Chomsky, many of us probably seen him before, famous linguist. He's one of the biggest in our time. He studies the source of language. He could not understand, and he tried to solve a problem. If we're born without anything on the fitrah, how does a child know how to speak? When he hears his parents, how does he know what's a verb, what's a noun, what's a pronoun? And he copies, but he makes his own sentences. He understands the command versus the request versus the... So Chomsky argued that there has to be something in your head called a language learning device. Language acquisition device. It's built in your head. And the question we ask, who put it there? Right? I mean, ayati from Allah's signs is what? Difference in your language and skin colors. You ask us, we already know that. Ar-Rahman, what is the ayah? Ar-Rahman, علم القرآن, what is it? خلق الإنسان, علم الإنسان, علمه البيان, that's the shahid, علمه البيان, that's the ayah. علمه البيان, Allah taught us language and clarification. Why I'm saying this? He asked the mulhid, all your sciences, where is it pointing? But Chomsky can't say that. Because obviously it's, he's dancing around it, but he's there, right? He's there. And this guy's he's a big guy, he's not a small guy, the biggest guy. And I'm telling you now, if you ask someone how, he said it's impossible. Right? So it's almost like a miracle. We tell them the fitrah gave us that. Allah put the fitrah so get the language. And a lot more is that the fitrah, it's not, as we said, it's not Islam itself, it's the potential to be a Muslim. So it leads you to Islam. Doesn't mean you're going to be born with the knowledge of Islam and Tawheed, Aqeedah, all details. We have the ability to believe. When a child is born, he knows Allah made him. Allah is one, Allah is perfect, Allah deserves worship. But he's not born with the details of that knowledge. That comes through wahi. Okay, so why I'm saying all this is what the fitrah is. Now, if the fitrah gets corrupted, then you need to correct the fitrah. Some people's fitrah gets corrupted. How? The environment, we said. The environment corrupts them. Or, for example, their schooling. Or their parents, they don't teach them anything or teach them wrong things. Someone's fitrah is corrupted, that person needs hujjat aqliyah, the logic arguments to get him back. As for someone whose fitrah is intact, because the fitrah doesn't disappear. It can get covered up, clouded, corrupted, but it's still there. But what's the best way to get someone? If someone is an average layperson, he's close to the fitrah. A little bit of arguments of truth, a little bit of discussion on haqq, that's it, seals the deal, he'll be guided immediately. And that's the secret. If you meet a layperson, you don't got to bring him the textbook. He doesn't know nothing of that. You just tell him, look, did you come out of nowhere? No. Do you think the universe came out of nowhere? He's going to say no. So someone brought it. Who's that? He's going to say yes. You see the arguments he presents simple. If iPhone came from somewhere, he say yes. You came from nowhere? You can't say yes because he knows that doesn't make sense. That's the Ami. Ami is really simple. The one whose fitrah is corrupted because he studied in university or he has all bad training, he has all shubuhat. You need to come with now sophisticated or more arguments for that guy. But the problem with the mutakallimun, they treat everybody one way. Ami guy who doesn't know contingent from possible, he doesn't know that word that the word means. You tell him, possible, contingent, he's looking at you like, what those words are you using? And we've seen it. You tell contingent, the guy is lost. After everything you explained to him, he still doesn't believe. Hence, some of the mutakallimun, they had a problem with the awam. So the awam, they don't believe the way we believe. They found that problem. Some of them admitted. Razi, imagine, remember Razi, the biggest of them, he said, the awam, they're not like us, their aqeedah is wrong. For example, Razi in his tafsir, he said, the awam believe Allah is above. Astaghfirullah, what can we do about this? They all believe that, because it's fitri. He said he had a problem, because what are you going to do? Make takfir the awam? And if someone will say no, be careful, some Ash'aris do. Say, the awam, everybody's out. And then because that doesn't sound correct, they say, okay, they're fusaq, juhal, they're madhmoom for being this way. Some of them, they got stuck on the hadith jariyah. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to those jariyah, where's Allah? She said, fi sama. According to them, that insinuates kufr. So the question, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did that? He said that? So I'm saying this, why? Because for us, we say the awam upon the fitrah. Ami guy raises his hands, he doesn't make dua. You ask him why you raise your hands, Allah's above. He's not going to say the qibla sama and some other complicated or acquired knowledge. No. And all I'm saying this is, but it shows the fitrah people is there. The one whose fitrah is corrupted, then you bring him arguments. The one whose fitrah is not, you don't have to. What's the dalil for that? The wahi, when it's revealed to somebody, it hits their fitrah immediately and he revives it. Nurun ala nur. The tafsir of the ayah, Surah Nur, one interpretation, nur wahi, along the nur of the fitrah. Allahu Akbar. You read some ayat, that's it. Some fitrah is good, khalas. And that's what Jibril Mut'am happened to him. His fitrah was there, he heard the ayat, Muslim. Somebody else, he needs more because it's corrupted fitrah. You see, but today the mutakallimun, they take everybody as one. Philosopher, the professor, the ami, the old lady, all together. And they're going to tell them all this stuff. We say, no, that doesn't work. And it's not correct. And the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never did that. And how do we know? When Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told Mu'adh bin Jabal to give da'wah to his people, he says, if they accept, if they know, and Allah wahid, Allah is one, arafu what? They know Allah is one. How do they get to know Allah is one? By simple arguments. He didn't tell them what to do. So scholars say, if you come to know Allah is one, you're good to go. So you don't need to come to Allah only one way. You can come to Allah's existence and oneness in many ways. So how does the argument now work in terms of science? Because the fitrah sounds very clear and simple. Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah writes that Allah made bodies amendable. Yani they grow with nourishment from food and drink. This is how the bodies grow. And just as their bodies have power that differentiates between nourishing food, what food is good for them, what food is harmful for them, in the hearts there is even a greater power that differentiates between truth and falsehood. That's the fitrah. So right now, for example, human beings, we know what the food is good to eat and what's bad to eat. The fitrah has in the heart knows what's haqq, what's batil. So if the fitrah is not corrupted, it accepts Islam very easily. When it's corrupted, it needs to be corrected, and that's why we need arguments. And therefore, Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah laid down a principle that the more people need to know something, the easier Allah makes it for the minds to get it. Since Allah is the wajib for someone to know Allah and to believe in Him, Allah made it easy to find Him, and to learn about Him. But the problem, we said, if you follow the other tariq, they make complicated what is simple. قُلْ أَفِي اللَّهِ شَكْ. Say, is there doubt in Allah? So if someone today is atheist, you say, how do you know Allah exists? Our response should be, are you really saying that the universe has no creator? You really believe that? Because that's an enormous claim. And it's a huge claim. Because what it's really saying is that everything that we know about the universe must be wrong. Because if Allah needs proof, what else needs proof? Allah needs proof. What else needs proof? So scholars used to say, if Allah needs proof, that means that person is khalas. He doesn't believe in so many other things. And that's why the atheists have a problem with so many things. They can't accept something because they denied Allah, they denied many of the haqa'iq, the realities of the universe. But if you tell someone, trust me, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existence, you know what's deep down. It's simple, it's clear, and you have to, logical necessity that Allah exists. Because where did we come from? And the fact, brothers and sisters, we should know the atheist, whatever argument he presents you, just remember his hal. He doesn't know where they came from, and he has no idea where you're going. He's a bad state. So sometimes people get intimidated. The atheist has no idea where we came from, he's still trying to find out. And when it comes to akhirah, Allah says, فَإِمْ تَتَهَبُونَ, where are you going? He has no idea. So the best He's going to give you is going to make you doubtful like him. If you asked him now, imagine the biggest of them died trying to find out how the universe was started. Now who started? How it was started? That's the best. The best of them, he died after years. So that's it. And now they got it wrong. Stephen Hawking, for example, some of you know him, he's a cosmologist. His whole life in physics, he's an atheist. What did he conclude? That the universe has some kind of Big Bang cosmology, something began it. But he had a problem. How do you fit time into it? Couldn't solve it. He died like that. That's it. SubhanAllah. Just figuring that out. Today they found out the universe is even older than they thought. Like a nail in the coffin. It's even older. Bigger problem. So if you ask the atheist, okay, whatever you got, so what are we going to do with our life? I don't know. There's no purpose. Where are we going? There's nowhere. We're not going nowhere. Where we come from? We didn't come from nowhere. That guy is not going to really be intimidated. But many of us think the atheists have solved problems. Atheists, one of the biggest problems of atheism, it creates more problems than any solves anything. And that's one of the easiest ways to know that even if someone could not prove Allah's existence to them, just remember the mulhid has nothing to offer you in response. Nothing. All he can offer you is that until we get that, we should not believe. He doesn't have anything. So as Muslims, we say that science today has confirmed Islamic belief. So there's many studies. 2 of them are the most notable ones. And Muslims, we can get them online for free. And even myself, I shared them with some atheists before. Many of them, they're shocked. They've never seen those studies. Number 1 is an older study, 2012. 2004, the first book. And then there's another book. It's called Born Believers by Justin Barrett. He's non-Muslim. Oxford University paid him a lot of money, big money, to study the beliefs of children. They concluded that children believe in a being, a creator. And so they did study, they take children of different ages and they ask them, well, where do you come from? Who made this? And just to see what their response is. And they always say somebody or something. Never, nothing. No one says this came into existence. See, this is important because that shows you it's fitri, a child. Now, another study came even better, 2019, by a woman, her name is Olivera Petrovich, Oxford University. Natural Theological Understanding of Childhood Adulthood. This one is even better. Because this one, she took children from America, Japan, places where not even religious, another place. And they asked different kids. All of them attributed the creation to somebody, a creator. None of them, even in Japan, which are not religious, because they always say, well, the Americans are biased. They grow up Christian. Okay, let's try the Japanese. Japanese did the same thing. And we know this is fitri. Because what's the foundation of this? Everything has to come from something. Only one thing has no beginning and no end, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is everlasting, ever existent. So that even children, they know that. Then something can just come out of nowhere. So the point I'm saying is that if children have confirmed this, and there's more than one study, and they found all of this. Children, irrespective of religious background and instruction of parents, share belief in God. That was their conclusion. Human minds are predisposed to monotheism. That's the argument. Predisposed. That refutes the other argument of the historians who say that shirk is the asl. Those are liars. Shirk is not the asl. Tawheed is the asl. Because Muslims, we believe that, right? Everyone was upon Tawheed. And when did shirk begin? Nuh alayhi salam. So we say that's what it is. These people now confirm that. Another thing they confirmed, that children and adults seek complete causal explanation to the world, to explain the observed world. Complete explanations mean, if today somebody hit you in the back of your head, the cause of that person who hit you. But that's not a complete, that's called an approximate explanation. Complete explanations, I need a final solution. So what made the stars, what made the moon, everything? It can't be, the sky holds the stars came in space. No, we need a final one. That's called complete explanation. Would you say it's God? So children and adults, they always look for those explanations. Scientists don't look for those explanations. Okay, brothers and sisters, scientists look for proximate explanations. I'm saying this why? Because when you study science, what did they give you? Well, we did the experiment and this thing reacted with this thing. Okay, and what caused the reaction? No, we stopped there. That's it. I explained it to you. It's like the car moves because I put the gas in it. Okay, and where did the gas come from? No, we didn't go that far. Just here. That's science. A clean explanation. And who made the car? And who made that guy who made the car? That's us. That's for aqeed. That's for deen. If you don't realize already, all of us study science or school, this is what they teach their kids. You put the gas in the car and the car moves, there you go. And someone will say, I explained it to you. And how about Henry Ford, who made the car? You forgot him, right? SubhanAllah, it's shocking. Children, they don't ask those kind of questions. They ask, who made the car? And that's why you see, we talk to a child, they ask that, who made the sun? And that's the question they ask. They don't say, right, where does the sun get heat? If you told the sun was just there, the child will never accept. He needs another one. He needs more. And this all shows us what the fitrah is real. Hence, the argument of fitrah says that people are built with it. If we're built with it, it leads us to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. The atheists, others, they don't like this argument. So they try to argue that the argument of fitrah is weak. Or it's not proven, or it's not correct because the argument says people believe in God, but then some people don't believe. So how can we, to respond to some of their things, we say that the fitrah, it starts off, as we said, pure and gets corrupted. Some things nourish it, some things corrupt it. What nourishes the fitrah? Number one, the wahi, revelation. That's the first one. Number two, taqwa, fearing Allah and being mindful of Him. Number three, knowledge about Allah's sharia or the creation. All these things, if you give to a child, increases the fitrah. So more knowledge, more fitrah, stronger. What corrupts the fitrah? Many things. The hadith of Abu Hurairah shows childhood and upbringing, how you're born and raised. Number two, the shayateen. Hadith Muslim. Right? We know the hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He created creation, hunafa, upon tawheed and oneness. And what happened? The shayateen came and snatched them from it. Shayateen, they misguide the children and the people from that. Number three, ignorance. Shaykh Taymiyyah also puts, for example, the hawa, desires. So if the fitrah can get corrupted, that explains everyone who's not Muslim today. We don't argue that they were born that way. We say they got corrupted that way. Why? Show me the history of their life. Another example would be someone comes and say, I don't believe in God. If you want to know more about him, ask him about his childhood. You get to a conclusion. Immediately. Oh, so you grew up this way. How was your mom? How was your dad? Huh? What school you went to? What do you study? How about the Muslims? Some say, I left Islam. Well, how much Quran you memorized? What madrasa you went to? None. Most of them are not even Muslims, guys. We find someone say, I was an Ahmadi. There's the problem right there. You weren't even in Islam to begin with. Then you became mulhid. Someone became a Rafida, right? From Rafidi, Shi'i, same. This is very important information, brothers and sisters, because today online, everyone comes and says, oh, I used to be Muslim. Do the homework on that guy. It's called weak apostasy. Most times you'll find he didn't practice his faith, deviant sect, no knowledge of Islam. Because how could you leave a faith you weren't even practicing? How could you leave a faith you don't know about? And you find this today true because ignorance caused the faith to be corrupted. So what he thinks about Islam is what his grandfather taught him maybe. Or what maybe his mom taught him something wrong when he was young. He still believes that was right. He never went to the imam or the sheikh and said, can I ask you a question? Because a lot of them are also scared to go on because they think to be judged. We have to explain. Our job is to explain, but don't be shy to ask. What we also learn from this, the fitrah can get corrupted. When the fitrah gets corrupted, it has to be corrected with the arguments or by showing the person revelation, wahi, and from the Quran. You can bring the ayah in the Quran about the creation, Surah Tur, whatever arguments else you can bring. Or you can or action with the person. But the fitrah, when it's corrupted, you have to correct it. We also see here when the person's fitrah is corrupted, this will explain why the person himself, he doesn't recognize what happened to his fitrah. He thinks what he believes is what it's supposed to be. But tell him, you weren't born this way, you were conditioned, you were raised this way. And I'll give you an example, one of the biggest atheists, his name is Michael Martin, the biggest atheist in today's time. Well, he's not known to the public, but when it comes to academia, he's one of the biggest. I mean, he probably has written the most arguments against deen, against religion. Every atheist argument under the sun, Michael Martin has it. This guy, how did he become atheist? His grandfather or godfather was an atheist, that's how. MashaAllah. All the arguments he has, that's how he became atheist. Pay attention. You probably think, how did you become atheist? You think it's some amazing argument. No, his grandfather was an atheist, used to raise him that way, and then to tribute towards him, he just became one and lived like that. If me and you today say upon Tawheed, someone says, how did you get there? My father raised me. That's an honor. Father raised me Tawheed. I should be happy, right? But some people today say, I should explore other religions. No, brother. If you put on the haqq, فَمَاذَا بَعْدُ حَقِّ إِلَّا الضَّلَالِ. It's only truth and falsehood. We have to understand truth is one, brothers. Some people come today and say, you don't know because you never saw their faith. I found Islam. I know it's true. Everything else about it. فَمَاذَا بَعْدُ حَقِّ إِلَّا الضَّلَالِ. What's after truth and falsehood? And this argument, some of the atheists, they like to use because they think the opposite. You see me, I open my mind, I looked at things. No, you raised atheist too. Hence why he's scared to talk to a Muslim. See, he's scared. Tell him, okay, let's discuss. He said, no. Someone will say, I don't want to. Why? Because it's the same. If the other person didn't, he thinks he's also studied. No, human beings tend to follow what we're born with. But also the Muslims, we have to be careful. Some young people today say, okay, I have to go explore Islam then. Other religions to see if Islam is correct. Ahlul Ilm, when they finish their studies of Islam and the foundations, they go and they learn other religions and they compare. Comparative religion. That is for who? Ulama and those who are mutamakkin, not the beginner, the firmly knowledge people. Today we have everybody's reading the Bible and reading this and that. There isn't no Quran anything. There's no Aqidah. This is a huge mistake. So we also advise the brothers and sisters not to do that. If you're curious about other faiths, ask someone who knows about it. They'll tell you what's wrong, what's the difference. But what's happening today, we're skipping all that. So let's do comparative religion. And the guy gets down. It's dangerous. The atheist doesn't even do that. You think he's that brave? So they come and say, let's go read the Muslim arguments. How many came to Islam and said, let's go disprove the Quran? Then they became Muslim after they read it. How many of them? How many? And the same argument was raised against one of the earlier Jewish reverts, Samuel al-Maghrabi. This sheikh, he's a Jewish doctor, became Muslim. He's the one Ibn al-Qayyim took a lot of his arguments from. Samuel al-Maghrabi, rahimahullah, how did he become Muslim? A long story. He talks about it. He saw a dream. A long story. Beautiful, his work. In the end, he said that the Jewish people tried to convince me otherwise. They came to me and said, well, you don't know everything about, other faiths. How do you know Islam is right? And he responded, truth is one, and I found it, and that's it. And he used to be a Jew, and also he's not ignorant. He's a rabbi. He knows the book. But they're trying to say you have to see other things. Why? Is truth in more than one place? See, today there's a problem. Someone say, well, you don't know. How do I know? Islam teaches monotheism. That's a criteria of haqq. Who else has it? Nobody. So what do you want? Someone said, look around. Look for what? Shirk. No God. What are you looking for? And this shows you, God, a lot of Muslims, they don't realize. What are you looking for? We told you before. Christians believe in shirk. Judaism is shirk. The atheists have no God. So where are you going to find monotheism? Or someone will say, Sharia. Who's Sharia? Whose book is preserved? Ours. Who else? So they say, look at other books. He's not preserved. He didn't have a book. He didn't have a book. I have a preserved book. It's already game over. So a lot of Muslims have to wake up. There's nothing to look. Brothers and sisters, if you ask a non-Muslim, can you come look at our religion? They can't even believe the things that we have. Some of them, they say, if we only had, what Muslims they have? Of the arguments, like hadith science alone. One of them, he said, I wish we'd have even a few, like dalil, like evidence as a Muslim. It's not one of them. It's a proof of prophethood, brothers. It's a proof of Islam, the Isnad system. We have hadith books, not hadith. So what we have to know is the Muslims were upon the haqq without a doubt. And it's not even a close second. Muslims should, what they do is study their faith like this. And lastly, how do you fix the fitrah? The last part. Someone knows this now. When you talk to an atheist, a non-Muslim, you can revive his fitrah. Maybe it's broken or corrupted. You correct it. What you could do, Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah says, a number of things help the fitrah. Number one, reading the Quran. Reading the Quran is da'wah. See, when you give the non-Muslim a kitab, they say, read this English translation. How is that da'wah? When you open the Quran's wahi, Noor ala noor. The Quran hits his chest, la shahada. See? That guy, maybe the other guy, he's not going to work. Second one, Ibn Taymiyyah says, rational arguments. Give him the Quran and say, if you have any questions, come back, and then maybe we discuss and we debate something. But if you just come to everybody and debate them, you're forgetting that the fitrah is there. It's faster, quicker, and easier. Because people's fitrah kicks in. Everyone knows. For example, when you die, what happens? Big question. Fitrah. It's always asking that question, what's going to happen to us? I tell them, Islam has the answer. Do you have an answer? No. How about, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whoever made us, if you don't believe in Allah, whoever made you, don't you feel like you have to thank Him? Where's the gratitude? And then you start thinking, yeah, you're right, I have to be thankful. A kafir, what does kufr mean? One of the meanings is hiding, because he's burying the truth. He's going against the fitrah. So the kafir, he knows he feels ungrateful. So kafir also means ungrateful person. Sometimes kafir, you don't make your 2 eyes, you never got your 2 ears. How do you think that person who made it for you? He says no one made it. So what do? He feels guilty. He knows he has to say thank you. He has to thank Allah. Worship Him. But if you tell him, do you thank human beings? Yes. So why not Allah? You ask atheists, okay, in your life, what's the purpose of your life? No purpose. That's why they have a lot of high levels of depression and suicide, amongst the highest in the world. Even with the money, the highest amongst the suicide and depression in the world is atheism. They used to blame the theists, to say the muwahideen are ones making us depressed. No, that's a lie. You guys are depressed by yourselves. And the proof of it, you go to their countries, like Finland, Norway, and these countries, highest level suicide rates comparatively. So tell them, your life has no meaning now. You don't know where you're going. You didn't come from nowhere. What kind of depressing life? And that's also a logical argument you could bring. If you want to be a mulhid, do you really believe their life has mean nothing? He knows that's not true because he goes to work and he pays his taxes. Why? Why are you doing all that? You don't believe in life. And most of them, they say, well, and they try to make up arguments. See, because if you let atheism run, brothers and sisters, it leads you to the lowest of the low, asfala safirin, the lowest of the low, until they believe humans have no value. But the irony, obviously, for them is that if you don't believe in Allah, you have to sacrifice many things. And I want to finish with this. The fitrah, because we believe in the fitrah, it also gives the Muslims the strongest way to explain to them why Allah and how Allah exists. So the atheists may say, well, I don't know any good arguments for Allah's existence. We tell them there are many. Morality, where does it come from if it's not from Allah? Consciousness, where does it come from if it's not Allah? Good and evil, where does it come from if it's not Allah? Human rights, where does it come from if it's not Allah? None of those questions atheists can answer, none of them. And that's just a tipping point, brothers. Evolution, they can't explain where it started. Big Bang, no one knows where it came from. When you die, no one knows what's coming after. So one of the biggest things for many, especially for our youngsters to know, atheism's explanatory power, the capacity to answer questions, is the lowest. So if someone told you, just tell me why it's wrong, it cannot answer the fundamental questions of life. Today, atheists believe in human rights, because the world does, but they don't believe in it. They cannot say there are such things as human rights. No Allah, no rights. No Allah, no justice. But if you ask them, if you become atheist, this is what you have to accept. No soul, no dreams, no experiences, like personal experience don't matter, no consciousness, no morality, no purpose. So many of them, when they conclude like that, next thing is just take your life. And also the life of others. Yes, some of the atheists also the violence. So I want to conclude this argument showing that alhamdulillah, the fitrah, something daruri, it's a necessity. An argument fitrah shows that science concludes in the Quran and Sunnah before that it is something innate, and this innate knowledge comes with it Allah's existence. Just like some of the other innate knowledge, like 1 + 1 is 2, like the fact of mathematical necessities, or up and down, or small, half is small, and the whole, these are built in. Allah's existence is also built in. If Allah's existence is built into us and believe in it, this means that Allah's existence is natural, atheist, hence unnatural, and therefore a person should actually explain to themselves why you atheist and not believer. That's the argument we should say. Why are you not a Muslim? Instead you are a kafir. That's the question. And if you want more, you can read into those books I mentioned, the science behind it, and also many other arguments before it. It gets more technical than this, but this is the gist of the argument. And alhamdulillah, this argument is the easiest. Some may say, what if somebody is corrupted the fitrah too much? This won't work. Then there's another argument. Maybe next week we'll talk about what kind of arguments, like the ayah in Surah Tur, how can we use that argument for them? And for Muslims, like I said, the arguments for us, many of us, is not necessary, all of this. Because alhamdulillah, we're Muslims and we believe in Allah and we have strong faith. But for many of our youngsters and the people in our community, it's necessary now. It's 30% of now Canadians are atheists. Why do you think it's growing? One of the reasons is higher education. Higher education is correlated to lower religiosity. lower faith. So we're sitting in Canada, has amongst highest degree holders in the world. See, America, only about 10% atheist. Why? Nobody goes to school in America. It's too expensive. And then they say, in God we trust, right? God bless America. That's what they have. Here is mulhid. And it's funny because some will say Canada is just so close. See, we have to get to this. Money is also another one. Richer people, those who are more affluent, have more atheism. Connected. So many times we have to be careful. Some people also want to become so rich, and then what? Allah says in the Quran, don't you see mankind? Right? When he gets money, he thinks he's self-sufficient. So also very dangerous that we also be careful. Wealthy still means you're muwahid. Yes, you have to be Muslim, practicing. Poor is still a Muslim. Educated, uneducated. But also we have to show that these things also can be challenged. It's not connected. So we have the connections, but someone doesn't have to be rich to be atheist, right? To be poor, but most times like this. So as Muslims, when we know this, if you find someone in your community, Muslim youth, someone in your work, a member, now that you know a little bit, if they call you, say, I can help you. I can show you, because it's very important. You'll be surprised, brothers and sisters, how many calls you get, all these questions you take sometimes, and people, they ask. Even one time someone asked me, or they had a concern whether Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam existed or not. Can you imagine? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam existed or not? Which person in the whole world, dunya kafir or Muslim, has doubt about that? Someone lied to them and said that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a myth. And for us, we're thinking like this is problematic. But the problem is not the person who doesn't know, it's the one who fed them. And unfortunately, it's a doubt. So doubts also, when they come, we have to be there and say, no, put it away, it's nonsense. So inshallah, we'll end with this much. Next week, inshallah, we'll take maybe the second argument, and then we'll move on to the rest of the part we mentioned, how to go from the belief in Allah to Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, and then the messengership, etc. And maybe, inshallah, we will summarize what we mentioned today as well. If we don't have any questions quickly, inshallah, we will take them. So the brother is asking, how about someone is atheist because the corruption is seen in the world? They call the problem evil, right? This is the number one reason when people become kafir, atheist. Alhamdulillah, in Toronto Dawah, we posted some notes on that, and we had we did 2 lectures on that, on the Islam and the problem evil, how to explain alhamdulillah in detail. So go on Toronto Dawah, you get it all there, how to answer it from the Aqidah of Sunnah Jama'ah properly. But it doesn't prove Allah doesn't exist. It's a weak argument, although it's the most common. Number one most reason for atheists is the problem evil. If Allah exists, why what's happening to Palestine is happening? So the argument is like if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can't exist because of this, but there's no connection between the two. The maximum they can say is Allah exists and He's doing bad. For example, na'udhu billah, He's a bad God. But you can't say Allah doesn't exist because of evil. It doesn't make any sense. So and if you accept the argument for a second and turn it on them, okay, Allah doesn't exist, that evil is happening. Where does evil come from? Or the atheist is in bigger trouble because he believes in evolution, most of that. And evolution allowed evil to happen. So he thinks everything evolution allows is good, so evil is good. That's called evolution problem evil. He's in bigger trouble. So that's why many professors said that the atheist had a bigger problem explaining evil. And you can also use the problem of good. Why you always remember evil? Why you have good in the world? Why are you wealthy? Why are you here safe and someone else is dying? So he can't answer that. So and that's why alhamdulillah the scholars have explained that Ibn Abdul Qaadir, Ibn Taymiyyah, there's very great detail, and some of the contemporary scholars, Sheikh Salih Sindi Hafidhullah, he did a great job in summarizing how to deal with it. But on the website, we just summarized a little bit how to explain it. So that's a very important one because it's the number one argument you're going to get. God exists, why is there evil? Tell them, okay, here we go, 1, 2, 3. And they'll be surprised because if you actually answer that question, you'll notice quickly it's not the problem they have. They have something else, but they try to use a front. Oh yeah, see? You try to answer this one. Tell them, okay, here's the answer, now what? And most of the time, Wallahu a'lam, many atheists, they have personal problems in life. You have to always be careful. It's personal evil too, what they call it trauma. Somebody, maybe his mom died when he was young. This is why he's asking. You have to be careful sometimes because someone who they're asking. Stephen Hawking is the atheist because he became atheist when God put him through a trial of sickness and he was wheelchair. That's when he became atheist. See? That's why he became atheist. He's on a wheelchair the rest of his life. This is why he disbelieved in God. So it's a kind of retaliation. And someone is grieving. So now you have to explain to them, look, good has some benefit too. There's silver lining. You have to believe that good is, this evil is not absolute evil, it's relative. And so if you read those notes, it gives you a good answer. And especially for the person who is suffering, you can also come from that angle to help and explain to them, I understand your pain, but that doesn't mean this is true. But if you don't expect that pain that he's going through, then you're also going to lose the opportunity of da'wah, because people are sensitive, right? Someone tells them, like, your mom had died for a great reason. It's hard for that person to hear from his mom. But you could tell him, I understand it's difficult, but I'm going to explain to you something Islam teaches, because Islam gives you hope. Like, if your mom was a good person and she didn't know about Islam, maybe Allah will ask you, Yawm al-Qiyamah, judge her. Or let's say she was a Muslim. Easier. Inshallah, she'll be in Jannah, right? So these are important for us. But I think that was a good question, because that's a common one they ask. Any other questions? The hand over there. So that's a good one. So from what we mentioned, what's the best way? I think when you meet the atheist, you first find out if he's atheist. Talk to him. Then argue with him a nice way by just explaining to him, okay, so how did you get to your faith? Like, how did you become atheist? It's good to find out more about them. They'll tell you things. Like, this happened to me, or I didn't find any arguments. And then you can say, look, in the Quran, we have the book of Allah. It tells us this. Science also says people believe in God. And what happens is that if he's a science person, you bring that side to him with the Kitab and Sunnah. If he doesn't have any arguments, you can present him the argument in the Quran. But you have to know about the person. If you don't talk to them a lot of times, they're not easy people. They have a lot of things in their head, a lot of doubts. Sometimes you might have to sit them more than once. The best to talk to them. And often they think people who are religious don't know anything. SubhanAllah, they think we don't know nothing. They just think those guys they just read the Quran and they don't know nothing. So this is a bad example too. So we have to come and say, I don't know if you met a Muslim, but let me talk to you. And I think talking is better. Get their number, even share them some stuff. And you see, SubhanAllah, some of them, they will read and they find out. And sometimes they'll come back with another question. Sometimes they just become Muslim. But I think it's better than to just give them the book and leave. But if you have pamphlets, some of them we have here, like taxi driver, Uber, you can just put them in the back seat, just give it to them. That also is da'wah. Sometimes we don't do that, like in your office, maybe you're not allowed to talk religion. I don't know, maybe sometime it works. So what you do, you give them a pamphlet, or we'll talk after work. That's a good one. Drink some tea and coffee. And one of our brothers, he works with one brother down in work, and he became Muslim. Young guy is talking to him. They're traffic control guys. One guy stands here, one guy stands there. They're just talking. Next, their guy became Muslim. Allahu Akbar. So it's like that. Talking really works. But the one thing we have to know is that once we know who they are and what they're about and what question they have, then you can talk to them. Even videos, there are some good videos, not that many of them, but some of them which are also very helpful. Help explain Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his miracles. So we can also even share those. But I think that's the best way, talking to them and trying to get them. Because sometimes they will talk to you, and sometimes you have to go and talk to them. Allahu A'lam. Any last question? Otherwise, I think we took enough time. Subhanallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.